Welcome back, everybody. Just Mike here. Glad you could make it. Anyway, today we have another cuckoo. Well, not necessarily a cuckoo clock, but it does have weights, so let's just call it a cuckoo clock maybe. Anyway, this clock we have to work on today is a West Germany Nuremberg, there we go, Nuremberg Church of Our Lady Schmeckenbecher music chime clock. Now the Schmeckenbecher clocks, they don't make anymore, so it's hard to find certain parts for them. And this clock, they don't sell parts for the outer side of the box. You have to have them made or make them yourself. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So this is a clock I have. It's a shame, I will admit, some people, what they do to these clocks, not necessarily this one, but most of these cuckoo clocks, they don't realize the value back when they bought it, or possibly it was handed down, they didn't really give a hoot. Anyway, sticking out of the center of his head, this here is what he's supposed to be holding down here, and maybe it kept falling out, so I drilled the hole in his head and stuck it in there. I don't know. It does have these priests that circle around, and also this movement, all the screws fell out, so it's trying to fall back. So right now, these priests are pushing up against him because it's getting ready to fall out. Anyway, down here is a knob that you would turn, and that turns the clock hands on the dial, in which one of the hands I was going to say is missing, but it's included in the bag of pieces and parts to the weights, and or not necessarily the weights, but the hands. So I do have both hands. There's an arm that's supposed to come out here, and it's supposed to hold a trumpet, and when this clock is supposed to chime, the trumpets go up to their mouth. That's the same with this side. The arm's missing, and the trumpet would go to his mouth at the same time. As that's playing, these here priests circle around, and of course this isn't a cuckoo clock, so normally if I don't hear the music of a cuckoo clock, I think it's kind of a dorky sound, and to me this is kind of a dorky sound, I will admit, when it does play. Anyway, it does come, this one came with the pendulum, and that should be almost easy enough to copy if you had to make one yourself. This here has the thin piece of plywood, then it has another thin piece of plywood glued to it in order to get the nails to stick, which you can see one of the nails is gone right now. But just the same, this should be easy enough to make another one if you had to make one, as long as you kind of know the size, I guess. This clock also is supposed to have these solid brass weights, and I'll give a quick measurement to let you know what the measurement or the weight in kilograms is, because if you don't have these, cuckoo clock weights will work also. No, that's pounds. 0.71. .325. That's an easy enough weight to find. So anyway, you can see this clock came with 3 weights. Now I'll show you the inside of this clock, which, like I say, the movement is loose, or I should say there's no screws left in it, and the chain is kind of boogered up right now. I'll show you the roof. It does have 3 black marks on it to give it that, I guess we'll call it the antique style. Made in Germany. This does have a decent hole up here for hanging the clock. Don't know what all this is about. So inside here, this here is the string that when the clock is turning the hands, it's actually turning this, and these beads come up and turn the time up above there. Now, it does have the music box, obviously the pendulum, whatnot. This here is what would be raising and lowering the arms to the trumpet players. And this here is off. Like I say, the whole movement started falling out, so it's not all where it's supposed to be. So I think what I'm going to do first is, because this is all loose, I'm going to take the hands off. There, well, I don't have to worry as much about that as I do getting this off in order to get this movement out. And this looks like it spins off, but I might have to hold on to the shaft to get that off. Okay, I got it off. On the shaft, first you would have the washer. And then it had the, I guess we'll call it the nut with the square hole in it. And that held on as if it was the hour hand. Then of course you have your decorator nut, or your hand, it would be a decorator nut. This is how you can turn the time. So that's how that was set up on there. And now it should just fall right on through. But I have to pay attention to the string with beads so I don't break that up. So this fell off, which is, let's just call it nice. And this is going to be a little difficult taking out because I have to work the priests around in order to get it to come through. And I don't know if I can or not. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to disconnect the pin here. I'm going to have to take this apart up here in order to get this plate to lift off so I can get the movement out. And it looks like it's an E-clip. So we got the E-clip off. There's more. Now we have a bigger E-clip. So there's two E-clips off so far. There we go. Kind of came out a little strange, but it did come out. I'm not sure how you get these out. Maybe you have to take the priests off in order to get that thing to come out halfway decent. Okay, I was able to get one priest off and is able to pop right out. You can tell how dirty these things look. So I'll scrub them up and see whether they still look good or not. The paint looks pretty good on them. So on this side, you'll see it's got the cutout, and that's meant for this here. I think it's supposed to be this one here to ride in, and I don't know yet, but I think there's a spring missing to hold this in to want to stay in there, because right now there's no spring at all. And as usual, this is, let's say, dusty as heck. It might be dirty in there too. Looking at it, it's been a little while since it's been cleaned. But roughly speaking, for what little I can see of it right now, this thing does look like it's in pretty good shape. I'm checking for wear. This one moves a little bit. On a one-day clock, the clocks can actually go through a lot of wear or have a lot of movement and still run. But this one here, if you can see that gear there, you can see it's moving, but I don't think it's as much of a heart attack as because of it being a one-day clock. Schmeckenbecher up here. Made in West Germany. Does have 25. It's regular. And besides the numbers there, that's about all I can see on this movement. Part of the music box. Well, it's not necessarily the music box. That's what runs the music box. This is for the chain. And of course it has a rod that comes through, and then all the magic is supposed to happen over here. Like I say, I'll get that figured out. So take the music box out. There's 1, 2, 3 screws. We'll take them out and listen to it. In fact, well, it's not going to be very easy to play it here. Okay, I got a long Phillips screwdriver. There's that plastic peg there. That's going to take out the guard so I can possibly clean them up better and have a better chance of building an arm. So what I did is I put the screwdriver right on the end of there, and I did a little tap, and it came right out. And so now all I have to do is unhook this spring. And there's the man, and here's the man with the spring, and you see his arm has to connect into there. And I'm going to guess by looking at this, it was a plastic arm, obviously, because that there's definitely all broke up. And so I'm going to have to come up with either making wood ones or making a new plastic arm that can come out, and might have to level this off and then glue the new one onto it. But it's good to take it apart to see what makes the thing tick. These things are pure plastic and quite dirty, so it's going to be nice to be able to clean it up all the way. And like I say, his arm comes out, comes across in front of him, and when this is triggered, he lifts the horn up to his mouth. So as you can see, there's a piece of cardboard under the music box. They had to do that in order to shim this gear up to the other one. I'm going to take a wild guess, and which is a bright idea. How else do you get it high enough? And this looks like it's in pretty good shape. Besides some dusting off, I'll go ahead and oil the ends in that dry bearing, I guess we'll call it. Get those oiled up, brush this thing off good, and this thing should be good to go. It's not a cereal box, it's cardstock. Cereal box would work. So figuring the condition of the box, this here, you see close enough, it has cracks in it, and I don't know that you can do too much about that. You don't want to start losing the print or the paper on here, because it's not like it's going to be stained. It's like wallpaper. So there might be some kind of a sealer I'm going to put on here to try to preserve this a little bit more. And of course you got just paint on the sides, or the very end and the top. He might need to be taken out and cleaned up too. So to get this winder music control off, nut right there, and this whole framework is a nut right there to release this whole thing. So you'll have to take the nut and the screw off in order to get that off. So taking the screw off the nut, that also releases the bell, so you can clean it too. And that nut's off and that nut's off. This should lift right off. And this has no adjustment on it. It would all come from this end here, which you can unscrew the screw there for the disc, unscrew the screw for the gear, and this should just slip right on out. Still a little snug. I don't think it's a screw, but we'll unscrew it a little bit more. There we go. And we have a I hate 'em E-clips on here. We'll take that off and this whole thing should be able to slide on out. We have another gear here. I didn't even notice it goes inside there, and that comes up to here. So let's take that screw out also so we can get this out. That just pinches on there. I thought it went all the way through. And then get this off. It's got two screws in there also, real teeny ones. And so for the gong, it's really strong. So it's a heavier spring. So I have to untie that and unthread through here, and that way I can unlock the hammer. So we have it untied. Now we can turn this to unlock it and get it out. This is going to stay because it's in there, riveted. So let's go ahead and start taking this stuff apart. We'll take that E-clip off, take that E-clip off, and see what we have underneath there. Both have to come off together. This here is the teeth that when it drops it tells the clock how many times to strike. When that falls down on the snail, depends on where it falls, the snail tells it how many times to strike. And there's the star wheel, a 2-point star wheel, and that there, once it raises up and then falls down, it tells the clock it's time to strike. And depending on how high it raises up, because a short raise up would be a half hour, which would normally be a 1 ring, and if it raises up high enough, then that tells the clock it's on the hour, and to count how many bells it needs to take to count the hour. Two-point star. So to take this off and to take this one off, they both have those crazy E-clips, I guess they call them. Before I do that, let's flip the spring wire off. And we'll see about getting those out. Now we can take both these out. And I think we're ready to go ahead and take these 2 nuts off. I put my fancy feet on there. Maybe. So now you can get a picture of the movement so you can see a lot easier where these gears go. So let's take it apart. This here is the music side, or not music, the bell side. Has a good clicker to it. Get your fan. It's dragging quite well, so the speed's not going to sound like an alarm clock. Here's your warning pin. This will stay in because it's attached down below. Time side. Got a good clicker to it. It's not wore out. Really dirty on the end. It looks like rust, and when we talk about rust, it very well could be the old oil, because it'll turn to a rust look also. It is quite dirty, a lot of dust in with that oil. That's why usually you want to take these things apart to clean them quite well. This will stay in because it's pressed on the front there. This here, to get this gear off if I wanted to, it has a screw there and a screw there. This here really has a drag on it, and so I'll probably go ahead and take it out anyway, because if you have a drag, normally your clock's not going to want to run too well, or it'll get stuck, such as the music, for example. So let me get the small screwdriver and get those two screws undone and pop that gear off. I slid this out of the frame, and as soon as it slid back a little bit, you could tell how free this was. So this here was actually in a little bit too tight, and I wouldn't doubt it probably did stop the music when it was supposed to, because that also attaches to, we'll call it the merry-go-round on top. So I'll take my fancy feet off of here, and we're ready to go ahead and put this through the cleaner. Lots of parts. So I have all my parts clean. And I use toothpick to go through each one of the holes where the gears will come through. I did that on one way, and then I went the other way, changed toothpicks, and I did the same thing to this. And this is ready to put together, but I think before I do that, I'm going to separate my parts, because all these parts don't go on the inside of the movement. And so to make it less confusing, why not separate them? By the way, I haven't cleaned this yet. This is going to be set aside until I get all this done, so I don't have any parts laying around, and that way everything that's in here won't get mixed up. So what I have left are the nuts, in which all the nuts won't go, just be 4 of them. I have 3 of the mean E-clips. We got the fan, few gears, the winder, and of course this will be last going in. Now what I plan on doing also, hopefully before I put it in, I want to oil this part here and this part here, because it makes the clock seem to run better, and also sometimes you'll start getting a squeak sound, and that's because the gear is hitting here and causing the noise. So let me get my phone out, and we're going to put this back together the same way I took it apart, I hope. So let me go ahead and get this oiled before anything else goes on here. This here oiler drops the oil in and it's supposed to suck it back up again. This one here is a little bit loose. But like I say, this is a one-day clock, so it's not too bad. If it gives me a problem, that'd be one that you'd put a new bushing in. I screwed this back on. There's a little indentation where the screw was, so you can see where that needed to be. You won't feel it with the screw, but as long as you get that pretty well centered, it'll be fine. This here wire had to bend out just a little bit because it was starting to hang up on the casing. Now it's not, and we'll have to see as an adjustment, because this here needs to fall into this in order for the trumpeters to come drop their horns again. So now the next thing I'm going to put in is the bell ringer part. It went into the top one, and you can see this movement could be a cuckoo clock one too. That why change the plate if you don't use those? Just know where this one goes. You put it in there, you lock it into place as it's dropping. That wire's messing me up a little bit, I think. There we go. Now we can thread that wire into the hole right there and bring it around and tie it up so this will have a good gong to it. So let's put the star wheel on. We have to get this so it's not, when it's done, there it clicked done. I gotta hold this wheel, oops, I'm not going through that again. Don't touch that. So I have to hold this wheel snug for a finish of the bell ringing. I have to loosen my screw, get it down, and what I want is this thing to finish. And so this way, when, and this is up off the plate a little bit. So now what we're looking for is when the clock sets, getting ready to ring, this gong won't even touch, and I'll have to use the nut again in order to do that properly. See, it moved and it's not touching the gong yet. And there it rang, and it's clear. Bring it around again. There it cocked, and it's not touching. That's what we want. So now we're going to drop this down through, and we need to hook the gear up on the bottom of it. And it does have another slot to go through down here. And what I plan on doing is oiling up here and oiling down into this plate here where it comes through. And I'm going to go ahead and do that now, and then I'll put the gear on the end. I have the gear on now, and it's snug, but it's not too snug, and so I think that's going to be a good thing compared to I could move it, but it was tight. I got it in there now. It's working. So to hold all this in, now this has to go on. And we can't adjust anything actually until it's in the clock. But we'll set it there anyway. This here gear, and also I'd put this on the right way. So this here gear can move in and out, And until I install this in for the music box, I won't really know where I need it. But I went ahead and screwed it in so that way I don't lose it. So I decided not to tear this thing apart. Mainly because we have one of them I hate you C clips or E clips. And there's not really much to it. I went ahead and just threw it through the cleaner and the ultrasound movement cleaner, and then washed it up with a toothbrush and Dawn dishwashing soap. Rinsed that off really good, and then went ahead and oiled it. And at the moment, things seem to be doing good, so I'll install it onto the movement here and see if we can maybe set this so it'll shut off at the right time. So I have the plate on, that there pressure washer or friction washer, whatever you want to call it. That was difficult to get on, but I got it on there. This gear, I forgot to show it, but this is a plastic gear. There's a brass bushing in there. We'll just call it a barrel if that makes it easier for you. And there's a brass peg that goes up through that plastic gear and out the top, and that's where that there comes into play, where you have to get that E-clip on there. I left the one priest off because I have to get it back through the door, and the only way to do that is to have at least one of them off. I washed up the king and the two, I guess we'll call them guards. And of course, this is the only one that's still together. And by the looks of it, this is all plastic, including their arms, well, their bodies are too. And this one happened to break off flush. So now all I need to do is get an arm, and in which I got one coming, and once we have the arm, we can imitate that arm to the other guy too, so they both have their arms. And then I'll have to come up with something for their trumpet, because obviously this one doesn't have any arms or trumpet. The king and the scepter, I don't know why they glued it in the middle of his head. Let's just say kids. This here belongs glued in his hand like this. Oh, and by the way, these are springs. And the weight of their arm, I do believe, and the weight of the trumpet is what causes this part here to, let's call it, spring load and go into the side where it's supposed to, because otherwise I don't see any other spring on here in order to do that. And so I think what they're doing is they're playing with the weight of getting this clock to look real, I guess. So that was a day's project. I'm gonna make a part 2. I need to clean the box the best I can, and then we'll install the movement into the box and see how well things go. The guys will be missing their arms more than likely because I don't know that I'm going to have time to get it in the mail and get it all put together along with this video, but we'll find out. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe because it's free. And until next time, God bless.